and individuals to volunteer, offer services, and give donations to help with our relief efforts. At this time, the need for this type of coordination in New Hanover County has outgrown the capacity of the United Way of the Cape Fear area. Consequently, an incident management team assigned to handle volunteer and donation coordination arrived yesterday and is fully active and engaged in ensuring that volunteer opportunities are delivered swiftly to our residents. Those wishing to volunteer or donate should now call 910, this is a new number, 910-284-9713. 910-284-9713. That is the volunteer opportunity phone number. Or email at hurricanerelief@nhcgov.com. Hurricane Relief, it's easy to remember, the @ nhcgov.com. This team will work directly with community and faith-based groups as well as individuals who want to help. And they are currently stationed at the Port City Community Church, where they are coordinating additional supply provisions and debris cleanup teams. Moments ago, Senator Michael Lee, Commissioner Skip Watkins, County Manager Chris Coudray, and myself spent the better part of our morning at Port City, and I want to take just a second to thank the hundreds of volunteers that are over there as we speak, doing everything they can to help our community. It's an incredible sight to witness, and we're very grateful for those efforts. I'm going to spend a brief amount of time talking about road conditions, rivers, and reentry. We still are encouraging or asking folks not to come home. We want you here, we love you, we miss you, but access to Wilmington is still very limited and is not improving as quickly as we would like. Roads throughout our county, and especially in surrounding areas that lead into our county, are unsafe for travel. As the rivers continue to rise, additional flooding is expected. Sinkholes are developing under flooded roads, making the hazard invisible to drivers, and we cannot reiterate enough to stay off the roads. And if you must be on the road, do not attempt to drive through any standing water. Within New Hanover County, Carolina Beach, Curie Beach, Figure 8 Island reopened to residents yesterday. And I'll emphasize the word residents. Wrightsville Beach opened to residents this morning at 7 a.m. Some other groups, like contractors for emergency repairs, etc., can gain access to Wrightsville Beach at noon today. Check with your beach communities about proper documentation needed to gain access. The county's landfill resumed operations today, and landfill hours are 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays and 6:30 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. City of Wilmington trash pickup services resumed this morning as normal. This does not include recycling or debris removal. Monday routes will be picked up tomorrow. So in the city of Wilmington, if your trash is normally Monday, it will be tomorrow. Residents should monitor their trash pickup providers for when regular service will resume. Some additional information. Since September 12, 11 people have been arrested, 7 for looting, 2 for curfew ordinance violations, and 2 for breaking into vehicles. Our curfew is still in effect from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. until further notice countywide. Crews continue to work on debris removal and restoring power to the community. As of 11:30 this morning, there are still 61,600 residents in New Hanover County, or households, I should say, in New Hanover County without power. That is an improvement. When I stood here yesterday, that number was 72,000. So another 11,000 of our households have power. And the crews are out there. You've all seen them doing everything they can I just spoke personally with a Duke representative who was here in the Emergency Operations Center who told me that every line of power has a crew on it. So thank them for what they're doing if you see them. I asked him when power was going to be restored at my house, and I got one of these, which was not a good sign. So I know what you're feeling out there, and we want to encourage you to continue to be patient. Duke Energy's comment was that some of the most challenging power restoration work remains ahead in currently inaccessible areas that experience massive flooding and structural damage. So if you're in the Greenville Loop area, Masonboro Loop area, you know what you've seen, and that's what they're trying to repair. New Hanover County has been declared a federal disaster area, so residents may be eligible for FEMA individual disaster assistance. For more information and to apply for assistance, you can call 1-800-621-3362. FEMA Director Brock Long will be here later this afternoon. I look forward to speaking to him, and will make the following request of him personally: that FEMA set up a disaster recovery center to focus on individual assistance for financial assistance and temporary housing. Hundreds of our citizens are displaced, and we are hopeful that FEMA will deploy those assets as soon as possible. We are continuing to operate Hoggard High School as our county shelter, and right now we have 593 residents. It will remain open and operational until it is no longer needed. There is additional capacity for those seeking shelter at Hoggard, and pets are welcome. Those with special medical needs who need shelter should call 910-798-6800. Our Emergency Operations Center continues to operate right over here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to serve our community and keep our residents safe. For non-emergency needs, remember to call 910-798-6800. The county does hope to resume normal operations and normal business hours on Monday, September 24th. Until then, county staff will remain operating our emergency operations and shelters, and for that we are grateful. So we're making improvements, and we have begun our long journey back, and I know that you've witnessed the same things I have witnessed in terms of the neighbor helping neighbor and friend helping friend, stranger helping stranger. It continues to humble me and impress me, and I just encourage all of our citizens to continue doing that. At this time, I'd like to thank Mayor Bill Saffo for being here and ask him to come up and make a statement or address any other questions you may have, and I'll be available for questions after that. Bill?
Thank you, Woody. Thank you all for being here today. I just want to make certain that all of our residents understand that every one of our major intersections will have roundabouts, and some of you have already experienced that, but they are coned, so you will see them as you approach those intersections. Obviously, with the power out, those intersections, that's the way we're going to be dealing with those. The clearing of our streets, we are now currently at 60%. And more to come. We have crews, over 30 crews, I believe, that are out there right now, operational, that are working very hard to clear the streets. Obviously, the second part of this is the pickup of the debris that has been cleared, but we ask residents as they start working in their yards and cleaning up their yards to make certain that they put the debris on their yard, on the sides there by the road, and do not block the road if at all possible. I will also, I did also speak to the Duke representative that also has indicated some of the hardest hit areas in downtown or in Wilmington have been Forest Hills, South Oleander, Glen Mead area, as Woody alluded to, Greenville Loop Road, Masonboro Sound Road. Those areas, from what I've been told, the entire infrastructure was destroyed, and it's going to take some time for those crews to get in there, redo that infrastructure, and then rewire it. So it's going to take some time. They've got as many people out there as possible to work on it. They're going to get to it as quickly as they can, but it was totally destroyed. Good news for downtown is the power from downtown Wilmington is on. I think Embassy Suites as well as the Balanced Hotel now are operational. I know we had some people staying there. In addition to that, obviously gasoline and has been a priority for many people running their generators or getting fuel into their cars. We are able to get some gasoline shipments into the area. There's been some very limited accesses as the way they've been bringing that gasoline in, and limited roadways that they brought it in, but they've been using high water trucks to be able to do that. Obviously, some of the rivers will be cresting today. Some of them will be cresting into sometime next week, so we're going to be dealing with a flooding event going into next weekend. So we ask for everybody's patience. Please stay safe out there. And again, the curfew is still in place from 8 p.m. To 6 a.m. tomorrow, and the curfew will be evaluated on a daily basis because we may make adjustments to it or we may lift it. As power comes on and things come back to normal, we will be evaluating it. So thank you very much and be safe. Thank you.
Are there any questions at this time?
Obviously, spoke to some of the risks of driving back, evacuees driving back. What are some of the consequences of people driving back, blocking emergency crews, blocking, not being able to be rescued, that sort of thing?
Jessica, you want to answer that? You're very well equipped to do that. Well, it's just common sense. First off, it puts first responders that are prioritized for other things, diverts them unnecessarily if you get in trouble, if you're in standing water and you've driven through.
All right, you've been listening to officials in New Hanover County, North Carolina, giving updates to Wilmington. The area, as you know, is threatened by rising water levels. But let's pivot now to the governor of North Carolina, who's also giving an update for statewide resources. Let's listen.
But to begin the FEMA process, call 1-800-621-FEMA, and to register via telephone that is for telephone, but to do it online, visit disasterassistance.gov. Here's some additional updates. As of this morning, North Carolina has 26 confirmed deaths due to this storm. We know North Carolina families and friends of these victims are suffering, and we extend our deepest sympathies to them. There are more than 1,100 road closures, including I-95 and I-40 still, numerous highways, and other primary routes. While road conditions are starting to improve in some parts of our state, rising creeks, streams, and rivers continue to make travel unsafe in many areas of our state. 343,000 people approximately are without power, and first responders have reported rescuing and evacuating more than 2,200 people and 578 animals, and rescues are continuing. Farmers are seeing flood and wind damage to their crops. A quarter to a half of the tobacco crop was still in the field and damaged. Cotton, peanuts, and other crops at harvest suffered damage as well. To the approximately 10,000 people staying in our shelters, and the countless more who are staying with friends and families or in hotels, I know it was hard to leave home, and it's even harder to wait and wonder whether you even have a home to go back to. But please, for your safety and the effectiveness of our emergency operations, do not try to return home yet, particularly in the counties of Pender, New Hanover, and Brunswick. Roads remain dangerous, and new road closings are still happening. Know that you're not alone, and people will be working to help you. I was in New Bern yesterday. The damage there is devastating. I had a chance to speak with people, some who rode out the storm and who said they wouldn't do it again if they had a chance to make the decision over. I also joined the Baptist men as they handed out hot meals to people in need. As distressing as this damage is, it's equally heartening to watch neighbors helping neighbors and see volunteers and people of faith stepping up to do their part. This is the North Carolina that I know in my heart, and is the reason we will make this state whole again. I know for many people, this feels like a nightmare that just won't end. I know many people are tired of the present and are scared of the future. But please know, we will not give up on you. I want to recognize Mike Sprayberry. Mike.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon, everyone. The State Emergency Operations Center is still activated at a level 1 with all of our state, federal partners, with volunteers, and also the folks from the private sector. On day 9 of the operation for Hurricane Florence, I want to stress to everyone that we need to remain vigilant, as many of our rivers in eastern North Carolina will be cresting over the next few days, in fact, through Saturday. Significant out-of-the-riverbank flooding is expected and will continue to impact the state. Today's cresting rivers will include Cape Fear River at Lillington in Harnett County, Little River at Manchester in Cumberland County, Lumber River at Lumberton in Robeson County, Northeast Cape Fear River at Chinkapin in Duplin County, Neuse River at Goldsboro in Wayne County, Tar River at Greenville in Pitt County, Neuse River at Kinston in Lenoir County, Cape Fear River at Fayetteville in Cumberland County, Cape Fear River at Burgaw in Pender County, and it's going to remain at a major flood level until the 20th. The Trent River at Trenton in Jones County, it also will remain at a major flood level until the 20th. And then the Lumber River at Fairbluff in Columbus County. We urge all of our residents to log in to our flood inundation mapping and alert network at fiman.nc.gov. That's fiman.nc.gov. That way you'll be able to see what roads and structures are going to be flooding, and you can also sign up to be notified by text or email when the rivers begin to rise in your area. Here at the State Emergency Operations Center, we continue to be engaged in large-scale search and rescue operations as well as logistical resupply. We've received over 3,000 resource requests in the last 9 days from our county partners, and we continue to push out resources as quickly as possible, both by land and by air. There are now 4 mass feeding kitchens operating in Washington, New Bern, Lumberton, and Kinston, and we anticipate having 4 more operating shortly. Special thanks to our outstanding volunteers from the American Red Cross, the North Carolina Baptist Men, and the Salvation Army for making these hot meals possible. Shelters do remain a top priority, and we're engaged in mass sheltering operations with approximately 10,000 shelter occupants. We're working aggressively with our federal partners to develop temporary housing strategies as well as an overall recovery strategy. As a reminder, it's important to note that all 911 centers are operational. When you call, you may be answered from a 911 center in another county, but responders will be dispatched to your county as normal, right from your own county. This is how the 911 backup center system works. I'd also like to thank all of our federal, state, private sector, and volunteer partners, and I want to especially thank our local partners. The leadership of our local partners are making this response successful. And I also want to remind everybody to follow the guidance of your local officials. If they tell you to evacuate from a riverbank flooding over, make sure you follow what they tell you to do. And also to stay in touch with your local media for situational awareness. I also want to thank also Brock Long for being here with his team to support us. We appreciate it, sir. And always, for all of you out there, thank you so much for your support of the North Carolina State Emergency Response Team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Secretary Jim Trogdon.
Thank you, Governor. Jim Trogdon, Secretary of Transportation. Today we have 255 primary roads closed due to flooding across the state. That's down from yesterday's 356. On interstates, we have two major interstates still closed, I-40 and I-95, in 19 separate locations. And then on U.S. routes, our other major routes, 93 locations that are closed. As roads are clearing in the northeastern part of our state, they're also flooding in the Piedmont. So be cognizant. You see the map before you how the black dots are moving a little westward. We anticipated that is due to the flooding from the rain event from Florence that has moved out of the state. So we anticipate that those will stabilize over the next few days. We have pushed 12 additional crews into the southern counties, primarily focused on debris removal and road repair capabilities. And then we're also working since Sunday contingency plans in case our routes due to the riverine flooding that will crest later this week, contingency planning to support additional resources being able to go into New Hanover and Brunswick and those southern counties. Those additional resources that we're planning on are ferries are going back to reestablish between our reestablished service for first responders and logistics support only from Fort Fisher down to Southport. And then we're also, and you see on the slide to your left, we've requested the marine vessel Cape Ray, which is coming off of a mission in Florida, to be available to us to come to the port of Morehead. This vessel can handle hundreds of large and heavy vehicles, resupplies of fuels and critical materials. We're opening our ports at Morehead and Wilmington by tomorrow. We'll be able to support this vessel, and it can move large amounts of goods and services down into Wilmington in case our primary routes that we're servicing those areas are closed by riverine flooding. I would really like to show our appreciation for our partners who are helping us get the ports open, supporting this request for the marine vessel Cape Ray. The Coast Guard, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have done an excellent job in helping us get our channels reestablished into our major ports, and also U.S. DOT and Maritime Administration for allowing us to consider this. We're in the final steps of planning for this vessel, and as soon as we get Department of Defense release from its previous mission, we will be able to bring it into Morehead City. I want to reinforce one more time to the citizens of North Carolina, please do not return to New Hanover, Brunswick, or Pender counties as yet. The travel conditions are much too risky for our citizens. The routes that we have only support first responders. They are not safe routes. They have risks of their own, but they are critical in us to continue to support response to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Colonel Glenn McNeil.
Thank you, Governor. Glenn McNeil, North Carolina State Highway Patrol. The safety of our motoring public remains our highest priority. The State Highway Patrol continues to surge resources and manpower to support local law enforcement in the impacted areas. Travel in these affected areas is still very dangerous. There are no safe routes in and out of the affected areas, as like what was previously stated. Since our last briefing over the last 24 hours, our troopers have responded to 126 collisions and 370 calls for service in our Troop A and Troop B areas. These are the troops that encompass the most affected storm areas. We continue to urge motorists, do not try and cross flooded roadways. If you find yourself in a flooded roadway scenario, we encourage you to follow the following tips. If you're trapped in a flooded water while in your vehicle, climb out of the window if electrical system is still operational. If not, wait until the vehicle begins to partially fill with water and open the door to exit. If you cannot exit the vehicle and you need to bust out a window, we encourage you to fight as hard as you can to bust out the top left and the top right portion of the front windshield and then safely exit the vehicle. If you have to travel into these areas or leave your home if you currently live in the area, we're asking everyone to please visit drivenc.gov to avoid traveling into dangerous and closed roadways, and to avoid the rumors that are being circulated that some of these roadways are about to open. That's simply not the case. So please stay tuned to your local media and also visit drivenc.gov to make sure that you can verify the route that you plan to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Dr. Mandy Cohen.
Thank you, Governor. Mandy Cohen, Secretary of Health and Human Services. I start my update today with a request. We know that this storm is going to be a marathon, and recovering from the storm is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. And so today we are requesting for nurses who may be able to volunteer to please raise their hand. If you're an individual nurse, we would ask that you register with the Red Cross. Go to redcross.org/ENC. If you're a group of nurses coming from an organization that can deploy as a team, we ask that you register with the state online NC training exercise response management system, or TERMS. So that's terms.ncem.org/TRS. All of this is on the HHS website. But again, today our request is for nurses who may be able to volunteer to support our efforts in recovering from the hurricane. Now, a few updates. We continue to put in place as much flexibility in our programs as we can going forward. As I mentioned yesterday, people in the Food and Nutrition Service Program will now be able to purchase hot food, including prepared food, for immediate consumption from authorized electronic benefit transfer realtors using their EBT card. This change applies to the entire state and is activated until the end of October. Additionally, families in our WIC program who are from affected counties will have an extra month of benefits loaded onto their WIC cards automatically to allow our moms and kids to allow continual access to healthy foods. We also have put in place some additional forms of flexibility in our Medicaid program so people can get care easier and doctors can provide that direct care. We continue to have up our 4 medical shelters. We continue to have our disaster hotline available for 24-hour crisis counseling. That number, again, is 1-800-985-5990. We know that disasters are stressful, and this hotline is a place 24 hours a day where you can get connected to services or you can just talk. Know that you're not alone and help is available. That's 1-800-985-5990. And last, let me end with a few health and safety messages that you continue to hear from all of us up here. Please, please do not drive or walk through standing or moving water. Turn around, don't drown. If you have flooding near your home, be very careful touching electrical equipment. If you do lose power, do not use a gas-powered generator inside enclosed spaces for threat of carbon monoxide poisoning. And lastly, related to food, throw away any food that may have come in contact with floodwaters or have not been refrigerated properly. When in doubt, throw it out. Thanks again, and continue to be safe.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen. We'll now have FEMA Administrator Brock Long.
Thank you, Governor. So, folks, it's really important for me to get out of D.C., be on the ground to make sure we're giving the good governor and Mike and his team everything that we can to be able to help North Carolina overcome this hit, as well as South Carolina and others. I'm very pleased with where we are, but I know we got a long way to go because this event's not over. So I think the next 48 hours are going to be incredibly critical. We're going to do everything we can to help the governor and his team, the dedicated members you got across the state working to focus on life safety and life-sustaining missions. We realize we got a lot of people out there in shelters, and we realize there's a lot of displaced folks, so we're doing everything that we can to make life a little bit better, each and every day as progress is made. It's going to take some time for the water to recede, as the governor was pushing forward and Mike was pushing forward, that some of these rivers still haven't crested yet, which is incredibly frustrating, not only to you wanting to go home, but it's incredibly frustrating to the responders and to our private sector partners who want to get in and fix the infrastructure. So as the system goes, as the water recedes, and the safety search and rescue mission comes to an end, we're going to be focusing on other critical lifelines, such as fixing the transportation system, helping our partners do that, helping Mr. Trogdon do that, because we know we got to get the roads back open to fully get the power back on, so that power crews and private industry can get back in to get the power on. We get the power on, we solve 95% of the infrastructure problems that we see. We also know that we're going to be dealing with a lot of hazardous waste, agricultural issues, all kinds of things. And so we're trying to push down everything that we can, to overcome and alleviate and stabilize those critical infrastructure lifelines. Now, when it comes down to taking care of people, that's priority number one. So what we're doing now is, the governor put forward, 1-800-621-FEMA. Okay. We're also asking you to go to disasterassistance.org. We want to try to accomplish as much of this digitally as we can. People going into the internet and being able to, register for assistance is sometimes easier than making a phone call, but we realize not everybody has the power on, not everybody has access to computer capabilities. You can also download our FEMA app, and it can help you to provide you tips that will lead you hopefully through the recovery, but also to register. So a couple other things too. FEMA, we realize that we're pushing forward. We realize this is going to be a big recovery mission and taking care of people. So we're pre-positioning not only our disaster assistance teams, we have thousands of people that we are pushing forward into the field to work case management, to make sure that we get into the communities. You're going to start seeing our people get into the communities as soon as they can, going to community centers, going to shelters, and being able to get out in front and help people register for assistance so that we can start kick-starting recovery. The other major program that FEMA runs is the NFIP program, National Flood Insurance Program. If you are a policyholder, call your local insurance agent. We're also going to be pushing out several thousand claims adjusters out into the field to also help this process. The goal is to expedite the assistance as quick and as fast as we can. But I'm here to say, Governor Cooper, you and your staff have done a phenomenal job. And if I could model this state and take it across the country, I would do it. So thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Long. We're very grateful for FEMA's assistance, along with Albie Lewis and Gracia Check and the people who are helping us here on the ground at the Emergency Operations Center. Questions for any of us up on the stage?
There are dozens, maybe a couple hundred ambulances sitting in Garner. Doesn't look like they've done anything yet. Is that they're going to be needed? Did we just have too much? Were they staged in the wrong place? If someone could speak to that.
I don't think any one of us can verify right now whose ambulances they are, but we did mobilize. Oh, they're FEMA's. Okay, then that's the National Ambulance contract that we roll. That's a pre-positioned asset to make sure that if anything fails in the health and medical arena and there's large-scale evacuations of hospitals or assisted living facilities, we mobilized a massive amount of ambulances into the state to be ready to support that mission. And luckily, we're not having to use them at this point. So, yeah, you're going to find stuff that's staged, ready to go, because we never know how bad these things are going to be. And it's a guessing game until, Florence fully exits the area. So, good question. Thank you.
Gary Robertson, AP, about some water infrastructure issues. Could you talk about evaluations of dams, how that's going in terms of getting an update on that, and also on wastewater treatment plants? Have there been, how would you describe failures of those systems, and what kind of danger may they have to people?
So the dams appear to be holding, and we are working closely with DEQ to have flyovers of dams to make sure that they're being looked at and analyzed. The what the water levels look like, so we don't see any issues with that. We did have a small dam failure this week in Brunswick County, but there were no households in the inundation map. And what was the other part of the question? Right, watching that very carefully. You know, we have a water system failure in Southport, but we got parts on the way, and so we think that'll be mitigated shortly. We are worried about other water systems as the rivers begin to crest, so everybody's watching that closely as well. We have some equipment on standby because, as you know, it's when you have a water system fail totally, that's a big issue. So we're watching that closely, but I haven't had any significant water systems totally fail yet. I will tell you that I do know that Jones County was having some issues, but Craven County had interconnects with Jones. So did Havelock, and so they turned on those interconnects and maintained the water system. So things are working, backup plans are working, no major issues.
Amy Elliott with Spectrum News. I know a couple days ago we were hearing about several hundred complaints about price gouging. Do we have an update to that number, and is there anything in particular people need to be aware of, if so?
I don't have an update to the number. You know that you can go to 8775-NO-SCAM to report any kind of price gouging. One thing I do know is that our business community as a whole have really pulled together and have helped out. There are dozens and dozens, and probably into the hundreds and thousands of the smaller businesses that have pitched in to help. So most of the business community is doing great work right now. Every once in a while, you'll have somebody who will violate the price gouging law. We're asking people to report them. I know the Attorney General is investigating some of them, gas prices being one.
Hi, Rose Hoban, North Carolina Health News. Wanted to just get a little bit more detail on the medical shelters. You know, how many folks do you have there? And you had mentioned to me earlier this weekend, Dr. Cohen, that perhaps there might be a fifth shelter opened. What's the status there?
Thanks for the question. We have 4 shelters open right now and have a lot of bed availability. So right now we do not believe we need a 5th shelter. I can get you those exact numbers, but we're seeing about 75% occupancy in each of those. Thank you.
I know we're still in recovery mode, but I'm sure also some thoughts have spun forward to rebuilding. And I wonder, with Mr. Long, with you here, what are we or can we do different this time, if anything, given that, you know, we've had Matthew and now we've had Floyd? I mean, is there any different thinking long term in how we react to these storms and how we rebuild and where we rebuild?
We want to be smarter. We want to plan this in a way that we get people back into housing as quickly as possible. This storm has put a spotlight on the issue of affordable housing that we have here in North Carolina and all across our state, for that matter. We were talking to Administrator Long this morning about a number of options that we have that could speed up this process, and I might let him say a word or two about that this morning.
So we've already been having conversations, and the governor's been expressing his ideas on outcome-driven recovery that we hear loud and clear. And one of the things that we have to deal with in recovery is that recovery is incredibly complex when it comes down from the federal government, and we're trying to do everything we can to cut through that complexity, such as expediting money out into the field to fix infrastructure and different things. We also have several opportunities. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox. What we have to do is figure out and sit down, and we're going to be pre-planning, moving forward with the governor and his staff on what are the outcomes that you want to achieve. I'm a big fan of doing it right. Let's don't rebuild to the pre-disaster standard only to see it being blown out again. We've got to factor in mitigation into the recovery efforts and the dollars that we're putting forward. So we're going to focus on that. We're going to push forward and help the governor make sure that we get over this and do it right.
And not only housing, but our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our water systems. We want to try to pull in as many federal resources as we possibly can. We've been talking to members of Congress, members of our state legislature. This is going to be a massive rebuilding project. We want to do it right.
Governor, so you met with Administrator Long today. Is there anything specific that you told him or his staff that you need or that you feel like has not met the expectations of the state?
Right now, FEMA is giving us what we need. They are beginning to get their people out across the state, moving into these areas that are very difficult to enter right now. Administrator Long and I are going to go down to Wilmington today, and we're going to continue to talk about the future. These next 48 hours are going to be critical to make sure that as these rivers rise, we continue to focus on saving lives, but we are talking about both the immediate future and the long-term future. Yes.
Lauren Harsh with the News and Observer. Last week, President Trump announced that he was planning on coming to North Carolina. And we've been hearing he's coming to South Carolina tomorrow. Is he also going to be making his way to North Carolina tomorrow? And when he does eventually come, are you planning on meeting with him?
The answer, we believe that there are plans for him to come tomorrow. That's what we believe. I know that plans like that are fluid, and yes, I would meet with the President of the United States when he comes to North Carolina. All right, 211 for everyone who needs information. Thank you to Monica McGee for American Sign Language. 888-892-1162 for people deaf and hard of hearing who need that type of information, non-emergency information. Thank you very much.
So we've been listening to the latest on Florence from North Carolina, the governor there and other officials. 26 deaths blamed on the storm in North Carolina. Still a lot of people in shelters, about 10,000 according to the governor. And, you know, he also brought up something that we haven't really talked about is the amount of damage done to agriculture. There was a lot of product in the field, tobacco, cotton, all that would be destroyed. So, you know, when we talk about the implications, the impact of this storm for many, many months to come, that's part of the impact and part of, you know, the price tag.
Yeah, for sure. We did get an update from the U.S. Coast Guard on some of the numbers and the resources that they've applied to the recovery from Hurricane Florence. The Coast Guard has rescued 426 people and 234 pets since the hurricane and now storm began. There are 26 shallow water response boat teams that are deployed to the North Carolina region. That's comprised of about 116 people. And so they are still in the midst of doing this search and recovery. In fact, they go on to say the search and recovery mission remains the highest priorities in the neighborhoods impacted by Hurricane Florence.
Because, you know, part of the reason, Vlad, is that though the storm is long gone, in fact, it's sort of up this way now, what's left of it, the next phase of this are the rivers and creeks rising. Tides, so, you know, people might have been in their homes and the water got up to their front door and they think it's okay to go back, and then it's not because, you know, flooding is still, you're still at risk of flooding.
Now, you may have also noticed while we were listening to that update from the governor, we had a small box showing the arrival of Poland's President Andrzej Duda, arrival at the White House along with the First Lady of Poland. So we're going to be checking in a little bit later with the White House to see what the president's schedule is as he hosts the President of Poland. But we're going to take a quick break and come back with a whole lot more news. So keep it right here. You're streaming CBSN.